The action figure landscape of today is vastly different from the one that I grew up with. Many of today's action figure lines are aimed at adult collectors, and even those lines that are still marketed towards children are, most often, very limited in scope. You usually only get a handful of figures, and if you're really lucky, your favourite line may come with a vehicle or two. But that certainly wasn't the case back in the 1970s and 80s. During the golden age of action figures, the toy lines were incredibly expansive, with wave after wave of new action figures being released with each passing year, and the vehicles were plentiful. But a big reason we refer to the 1970s and 80s as the golden age of action figures is due to the phenomenon of the action figure playset, a concept that is all but forgotten today. Most vintage action figure lines were deliberately designed to include products that could be sold at various different price points. The idea being that throughout the year a child could use his or her pocket money to gradually assemble a team of their favourite action figures, and then for their birthday they may be gifted with a vehicle or two, before finally getting their hands on the biggest product for Christmas, the action figure playset. Vintage playsets were always the flagship product for any action figure toy line. They were the big wow that every child wanted to get for Christmas, and many of them are truly iconic. So sit back and relax as we take you through the Analog Toys countdown of the top 10 best vintage playsets. Hello action figure fans, my name is Tony and welcome back to the Analog Toys YouTube channel. Now before we get started with the rest of the video, I just want to take a quick moment to explain a few of the rules we applied when drawing up this list. Firstly, we allowed for only one entry per toy line. Otherwise, Hasbro's G.I. Joe A Real American Hero may have taken several places on this list. And secondly, we considered vintage toy lines to be pre-1990, because that's when my childhood interest in toys ended. Now that doesn't mean that 90s toy lines aren't vintage, and if you consider them to be, then that's absolutely fine with us. No one at Analog Toys will disagree with you. There is just no real definition for what should be considered vintage, so when I use the expression vintage toys, I am simply referring to toy lines that were released either during or before my childhood. And so kicking us off in the number 10 slot is the M.A.S.K Boulder Hill playset from Kenner. M.A.S.K Boulder Hill is a playset that I never had when I was a child, and I am yet to acquire one as an adult. In fact, I never had any M.A.S.K toys when I was a child. I was too interested in Action Force, but Kenner's M.A.S.K line was still very intriguing to me. The M.A.S.K toy line was all about awesome vehicles that could transform, and the tagline, "Illusion is the ultimate weapon." This toy line was very popular in the 80s, and Kenner made every effort to impress when designing this amazing playset. Boulder Hill was Matt Tracker's secret command centre, a gas station built into the side of a mountain that switches into a defensible base. With flip-out armaments, gas pumps that transform into cannons, and a giant boulder that could launch off the top of the mountain and crush their venomous foes. This playset came stacked to the brim with awesome play features, and it is one toy that I definitely want to add to my collection. Taking the number 9 slot on this list is the Dodge City playset from the Louis M.A.S.K Lone Ranger toy line. In the United States, the Lone Ranger toy line was produced by Gabriel, and the range included the sprawling Carson City playset that was manufactured from heavy cardstock. But the best playset in the range was Dodge City, produced by Louis M.A.S.K and only sold in Europe. Louis M.A.S.K manufactured several different wooden playsets for this range, but the biggest and best was the Lone Ranger Dodge City playset. Dodge City is both large and weighty, and features a stable where the characters can let their horses rest overnight. The centre of the playset houses a postbank and store, and next to that is a jail cell where Tex Dawson can lock up members of the Cavendish gang. The final section of the playset features a blacksmith shop, but this area is a little underwhelming unless you can fill it out with a figure dressed in the Broken Horseshoe outfit. Every area of this playset is adorned with really interesting details printed across the wooden panels, and this extends to the back of the playset, where I just love the addition of the Butch Cavendish wanted poster. The Lone Ranger may be somewhat of a forgotten toy line today, but I believe it to be extremely underrated, and the inclusion of this epic playset provided toy fans with a marvellous mini environment in which they could act out the many adventures of the Lone Ranger. Coming in at number 8 is the Ghostbusters Firehouse Headquarters from Kenner. This toy line from Kenner was not based on the smash hit 1984 movie Ghostbusters, but rather the animated children's series The Real Ghostbusters, and the firehouse headquarters is clearly modelled after its cartoon counterpart. The crown jewel in any Ghostbusters action figure collection, the firehouse headquarters is 3 stories tall and features goop grates for pouring ectoplasm through, a ghost containment unit, and a slide pole that doesn't really work that well unless you fit 2 figures to the platform to balance out the weight. I really struggled with my decision to include this playset on the list, because when you consider the play value it offered to a child, the firehouse headquarters is quite underwhelming. The middle and upper levels are very sparse and there really isn't much here to keep the Ghostbusters occupied. But I am certain there would be a huge backlash if I didn't include the Ghostbusters firehouse on this list. And while there may be only one reason I finally included it, it is a big reason, and that's the magnificent display ability of this set. I mean, just look at it. The Ghostbusters firehouse is the definition of what makes a playset iconic, and it's the perfect centerpiece to any Kenner Ghostbusters collection. Number 7 on the list of the best vintage playsets is the Action Man Training Tower from Palitoy. As regular viewers will know, Palitoy's Action Man is far and away my favourite toy line of all time, and I also firmly believe that Action Man is the greatest British toy ever developed. Palitoy's Action Man line lasted for 18 years, and during that time the wealth of different products released gave the range a scope of truly epic proportions. Action Man was all about innovative figures, stunning uniforms and awesome vehicles, but due to the large 12-inch scale of the figure, playsets were not something that Palitoy was inclined to develop for the line. A child's backyard was the perfect playset for Action Man, and this thinking kept Palitoy out of the playset market for many years. That was until Hasbro developed the Adventure Team Training Centre for their 12-inch G.I. Joe line, and Palitoy borrowed the tooling in order to release this product as part of the Action Man line. Sold in the UK as the Action Man Training Tower, this set is the largest Action Man toy ever released. I mean, just look at it. This box is massive! Standing almost 4 feet tall, the Action Man Training Tower is a self-assembly set comprised of a number of modular tower panels that clip together. The set also has a number of cool play features, including a rope ladder and climbing net. The platform perched atop the tower includes a crane for lifting cargo, and Action Man also uses this platform as the launch pad for his escape slide, which is easily the most fun feature of the entire playset. And coming in at number 6 is the Well of the Souls from Kenner's Adventures of Indiana Jones toy line. Many of the best action figure playsets are quite large in scale, but size doesn't always matter. Easily the smallest playset on this list, the Indiana Jones Well of the Souls playset earns its slot for being incredibly accurate to the movie. Gorgeously designed, the Well of the Souls playset features a plastic base with 2 gold arches and a crypt cover that can be removed to reveal the Lost Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is magnificently designed, with amazingly accurate sculpting and a gold metallic finish. This accessory also includes 2 carrying poles, just as it did in the movie, and I consider this to be one of the most beautiful action figure accessories ever designed. The playset also includes 2 torches and a mummy, and the environment is decorated with an abundance of snakes. And just as he did in the movie, Indy can escape the Well of the Souls by smashing through the sandstone wall. The Well of the Souls playset breathes life into any Indiana Jones action figure collection, and will forever remain one of my favourite display pieces. The number 5 slot on this list comes from LJN's Dungeons & Dragons toy line, the Fortress of Fangs. LJN's Dungeons & Dragons was a short-lived toy line that only produced 1 playset, but boy was that playset awesome. This is another toy that I never owned as a child and I am yet to acquire today. The overall look of the Fortress of Fangs is quite stunning, and the set looks amazing when displayed. This fortress is loaded with all kinds of cool play features, such as booby traps, a crushing wall of spikes, and a trapdoor. Guarding the top of the playset is a purple-winged gargoyle, and there are multiple levels here for the action figures to interact with. If you want to get a really good look at this playset, then I highly recommend checking out the Retro Blasting YouTube channel and watching their video titled Dungeons & Dragons World Without Heroes. This playset really does a fantastic job of capturing the essence of Dungeons & Dragons and recreating that world in toy form. And even though this is a difficult playset to find today, I still recommend seeking it out for your 80s action figure collection. Coming in at number 4 is one of my personal favourites, the Savage Strike headquarters from Coleco's Rambo line. Coleco's Rambo and the Force of Freedom toy line is another personal favourite. Granted, it's not up there with the likes of Action Man and Star Wars, but it's still a really enjoyable toy line nonetheless. Coleco only produced one playset for this toy line, the Savage Strike Headquarters, and what's really interesting here is that Coleco opted to make the playset a base for the villains and not the heroes. The playset is comprised of a large plastic contoured base and a tall watchtower that features a jail cell on the lower level and a defensive position on the top that includes numerous armaments. A communication centre is hidden behind armoured wall panels, and the strike headquarters also comes with more guns than an invading Russian army, including an anti-aircraft gun, a tripod-mounted grenade launcher, and crates of spare rifles and machine guns. The Savage Strike headquarters has an awesome paramilitary look and feel, and of course, just like all the other best action figure playsets, Warhawk's base also includes a trapdoor. I'm sure not everyone will agree with this entry on the list, but I love this playset and cherish every excuse I get to pull it out of storage, set it up, and film it for a video. As we get closer to the top slot, the number 3 entry is the largest playset ever created, the G.I. Joe USS Flagg aircraft carrier. The Flagg aircraft carrier has surpassed its status as an action figure playset and moved into the realm of 1980s toy legend. Being the largest toy ever created for any action figure toy line, the sheer scale and ambition of this playset is something to be in awe of, and it will forever remain a true landmark in the history of toy design. This toy is simply mind-boggling in scale and scope, and the fact that the very idea of it wasn't laughed out of Hasbro headquarters is quite the miracle, and speaks volumes to just how popular the G.I. Joe toy line was back in the 1980s. The Flagg aircraft carrier is quite accurately based on the US Navy Nimitz, and this towering hunk of plastic measured over 7 feet long and 3.5 feet wide. The Flagg has been on the top of my Holy Grail wants list for over 10 years. It is the ultimate toy centerpiece, and something that I would consider selling an organ for, just to raise the funds required to acquire a complete one. Once again, this is a toy that I'm yet to add to my collection, so if you want to get a better look at the most gorgeous grail to ever set sail, then head over to Michael Mercer's YouTube channel, which has numerous videos covering this most mammoth of playsets. Taking the number 2 slot on this list is a moon.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
Kenner's Death Star Space Station is easily the best playset ever made for the legendary Star Wars toy line, and I feel the designers made a wise choice to only construct a pie slice section, because manufacturing the entire Death Star in toy form would have even dwarfed the G.I. Joe Flagg aircraft carrier and would have been simply too big for your average child of the 70s to acquire. The best aspect of this playset is the multitude of play features, which enable a child to recreate many of the iconic scenes in the original Star Wars movie. Ben Kenobi can disable the tractor beam, Han, Luke and Leia can escape the detention center and end up in the trash compactor, which can be removed to become a little mini playset of its own, and I love the addition of the Dianoga trash monster. Kenner's Death Star also features an elevator to access the different levels, and a retractable bridge where Luke and Leia can swing to safety, and all of this is topped off with a massive laser cannon that blows up after being attacked by an X-Wing fighter. This playset is a fantastic must-have item for any vintage Star Wars collector, and Kenner certainly need to ignore Darth Vader on this one, because they really should be proud of the technological terror that they constructed. Now this is usually the point in the video where we reveal what we consider to be the worst toy ever created. But even though some of these playsets are better than others, we really couldn't pick a truly terrible one. So instead of going with a worst entry, we're going to reveal a few honourable mentions that just didn't quite make the list. So in no particular order, here are 4 honourable mentions that almost made the grade. Firstly, the Technodrome from Playmate's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line. The Cat's Lair from LJN's Thundercats line. The Star Trek Bridge from Mego. And the final honourable mention goes to the Batcave Command Centre. Now, I don't know if the t-shirt gave it away, but coming in at number 1 is the all-time greatest action figure playset ever created, Castle Grayskull. Iconic, imposing, magical and wondrous. These are all words that people use to describe the best action figure playset ever created, Castle Grayskull from Mattel's Masters of the Universe toy line. Castle Grayskull was far more than just a playset. Thanks to the mini-comics that came packed in with all the action figures, children quickly realised that this Gothic-inspired castle was the literal epicentre of the whole story, where the forces of good and evil would battle over control of the castle and its secrets, for whoever controlled the castle would be the masters of the universe. The front of the castle is handsomely sculpted with a skull visage that features a drawbridge door for a mouth that can only be opened by He-Man's power sword. With a fold-out design, the inside of the playset has multiple levels and play features that include a weapons rack, an elevator, defensive towers, and a throne room that incorporates a trapdoor. And this was by far the most enjoyable part of the toy for me when I was a child. I have always considered the Masters of the Universe mythology to be a fantasy fairy tale, and the stories of He-Man and Skeletor enraptured the attention of an entire generation of young children. And no toy perfectly captures the essence of this childlike wonder, quite like Castle Grayskull, which is why this toy ranks as the #1 playset on this list. So that's our top 10 best vintage playsets. Did you agree with our list? Please leave us a comment in the section below, and if you'd like to support the channel further, then head on over to our Patreon page, where you can get exclusive access to behind the scenes information on all of our upcoming videos. I'm Tony from Analog Toys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.